It's been a crazy last month or so. How would you grade Hugh Freeze his first weeks on the job?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy War Rapport Wednesday to all who celebrate. Mike G is back. Mike G, of course, of the War Rapport. Glad you're feeling better, buddy. Glad you're feeling better. Welcome back.
Yeah, listen, if you sent well wishes or, donated or, just overall just wish me well, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been a little bit of a journey back, but I'm happy to be back. And, this is just the first of many steps in getting all the way back. But I'm thankful and praising God for the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. All right. We haven't talked in a minute, but since we last had you on, Hugh Freeze has done a ton of remarkable things for the Auburn football program. Whether it's, ascending the signing class, approaching the early signing period, or for the most part, I think the transfer portal, not as active as I expected it to be at this point. I think a lot of people are waiting until later during the 45-day transfer window, which is cool. Didn't expect it, but it makes a ton of sense now that we're here. But how would you grade Hugh Freeze so far based on everything that you've been able to see?
A-, I think. I'll tell you what, A-, and primarily because he was able to come in and hit the ground running in recruiting. Now, getting hired at the end of the season is a tough task for any coach. And me personally, I always give a coach that gets hired in that position, kind of a pass, Zach, on that first recruiting class. But the landscape of college football has changed. And with the portal and, and the early signing day, I think makes it tougher on new coaches coming in because that timetable is truncated. If you don't already have those relationships from your previous stop, it can be really difficult to pull together a recruiting class. So, I give Hugh Freeze an A+. I think when you look at the overall state of the program, he kind of took the momentum that Caddy built going into the end of the season and used it to catapult himself forward. So at his opening presser, you and I were there. The first thing he says is, this guy's staying. Let's acknowledge him. I mean, standing ovation for Cadillac. Yeah. Boom. Right. Great start to your tenure. Acknowledging an Auburn legend and giving credit where credit is due. And then talking about, hey, we're going to get, he was bold in his proclamations about being able to fix quarterbacks and turn programs around quickly. Now, it puts a little bit of a pressure on yourself when you make those statements as bold as he did, but he did it. And now we're here. And then he backed it up, by going out there and really what I would say smashing it in recruiting based on the timetable that he had to pull together a recruiting class.
Yeah, pretty remarkable job. Remarkable job. And I'm glad you brought up the Carnell Williams stuff because at first I think it would have been really easy to say, oh, he's just keeping Caddy around because, you almost have to, right? And now it's probably part of the conversations, when he was hired. But their energy together, it's just such a natural fit. It's like a Batman and Robin type feel to it. It wasn't just I'm keeping Caddy around because I have to. It's because
they're making me.
This guy works really well with me, and their personalities match and their energy match. And then we'll talk about the newest wide receiver coach hire in a second. But this staff as a whole gels together so well, and I don't think that's by accident. I think that was very strategic what Hugh Freeze is trying to build here.
Yeah, well, synergy is important on your staff, and being able to have team chemistry and be aligned in the vision and work together toward a common goal is very important. Now, again, one of the knocks on the last staff may have been during their tenure as people pulling different directions when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to NIL, and you just can't have that if you're going to have a successful program, right? You have the guy, and his vision has to reign supreme, and everybody else has to get on board. But also, the other guys that are supporting him need to feel like they can get their input in as well too. I think Hugh Freeze has a pretty good open door policy when it comes to that. So he's taking their feedback, but he's taking all the experience that he's built over his long, successful career and applying it right now to help turn Auburn around quickly.
Yeah, the vibe right now, and we'll do this show. We already did it over Christmas. Was like some things that Hugh Freeze has given Auburn fans for Christmas, and the first one I mentioned, Mike G, was hope.
Right,
and I think a lot of that has to do with energy, and you mentioned the synergy of the staff. But for the first time in a while, there's a lot of optimism about everything that he's been able to do. I think there's belief in his scheme. There's belief in his ability to go out and get players. I think we need a little bit more information about like the NIL situation in Auburn, but at least right now it appears strong. It appears good. Mm-hmm. And to me, the hope that's tied to all of this is exactly what Auburn fans needed after the last 2 years.
For sure. Hope is so important, Zach. Hope is important for, the players. It's important for the coaches, and it's important for the alumni and the fan base who ultimately are going to be supporting your program, not only, with their cheers from the stands, but with their dollars as well, too. Right. So, yeah, hope is a very underestimated part of what, Hugh Freeze is building here at Auburn.
All right. Auburn added a wide receivers coach. Mike G, I love this hire. We'll discuss this hire in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online is the best place to wager on all of your sporting action. Bowl season, we're in the thick of it with the playoff games coming sooner, closer and closer. The Rose Bowl creeping up as well. You got to get in on that. And of course, Auburn basketball taking on Florida this evening will be a huge one for Bruce Pearl starting conference play. Get in on the action. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. Mike G of the War Rapport. What's the War Rapport up to these days, brother?
Oh, man, just making context. We're snapping necks, cashing checks at the War Rapport. Zach, I said that really weirdly, but, we're awkward here on War Rapport Wednesdays. Okay. We got a lot of good things going on at the War Rapport. For those of you who have been following me, I want to thank everybody for their love and support and prayers, on the road to recovery here.
Yeah.
So look out for lots of great stuff from us here in the near future.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Marcus Davis, wide receiver during the Gus Malzahn era. And then he went back and was an off the field guy for Gus. And then he's just kind of ascended throughout his coaching career all over the place, and everywhere he goes, the receivers get a little bit better. I love this because when you look at this staff with Davis at receivers, Thornton at offensive line, mm-hmm. Hugh Freeze is getting younger coaches that have all of this energy. They want to recruit. They want to grind, and work their tail off either for the school or for, promoting and elevating their careers. I love all of this. I love the youth on this staff with the exception of the coordinators because they're going to be your scheme guys. And McGriff hasn't slowed down. He's been recruiting, ever since he got into the profession, which is great. And I think I saw Charlie 5 talk about this on a message board post. Mm-hmm. But he talked about how we like to romanticize these retread hires, these folks that have been doing it in the SEC and been okay at different spots instead of swinging for the fences. And I like that Hugh Freeze went with the upside of Marcus Davis versus somebody that we kind of already know what they are.
Right. I maybe have a different feeling about this.
Okay.
Now, listen, I love Marcus Davis.
Sure.
And I love the upside to the hire. I like everything that I like about it. But also, they didn't even give an interview to a guy who was pretty popular with the players here and, had NFL experience. And, this is one of those things where it's 50-50 for me. He decided to go this direction. I like it. I don't think there was a wrong decision to make here, but I definitely think I have some questions about, why you don't give a guy like Ike Hilliard an interview and then you go out and you make this hire in particular. So, from my understanding is he was not given an opportunity to interview for retention. So, it's
sure.
It's a little, whatever to me. But again, this is not me poo-pooing the hire of Marcus Davis. So those things aren't mutually exclusive. I like this hire. I think, bringing in a guy like that who did really well here, understands the culture, right, will be able to relate to kids. And I think he matches the energy of the staff, the recruiting staff that they currently have as well too. Because you got to get out there and recruit, Zach, and you got to do it with energy and vigor. And I like hiring younger guys for this reason, because they'll do it. They've got that thing, you know.
Yeah, I've got a Marcus Davis story. So he came on my radio show a lot when I was doing middays on ESPN 106.7 here in Auburn, and he would come on. Then we would go get lunch afterwards. We'd grab a great lunch or a late lunch rather, and we would just chat. And at this time, he was doing something other than football. He was selling stuff, and you could just tell the passion that he had for football. And he talked about it. He's like, man, I got to get back into it. And, you know, he tried to make it into the league, and he was dealing with injuries, and he never really got a fair tryout to be an undrafted guy, which is a total shame. Total shame. And then, you know, Gus finally calls him, and it sounds like Gus had to ask him a few times. He's like, yes, all right, I'm in. And boy, man, he has taken that opportunity and ran with it. I mean, this is a guy that just, if you're sitting around, he wants to talk about football, and he wants to talk about how you can make a program better and what they should be doing on offense. And just, it's a great fit. And you know, this was what, 5 years ago? And so
it's a great fit. It's a great fit.
And so during his experience now at different stops, I love it. I absolutely love this fit culturally. And as far as what he means for the Auburn football program, I mean, we talk about, Zach Etheridge, and we talk about Carnell Williams, and those guys were probably better players than Marcus was. But as far as, what you want, and I'm just thinking, if I am a parent and my kid's a 4 or 5 star receiver or any position, and Marcus comes and sits down in my living room and talks to me, there is no way I'm not trusting that guy with everything. I love this guy. And so I can't wait to see what he does at this level. I really can't.
Yeah, I'm getting the sense that you really like this hire.
I do. Well, I love Marcus Davis. That's just really what it comes down to. Is I love Marcus Davis.
I think that again, when you talk about fit, Zach, I'm pointing back to my previous statement. I think he matches the energy that the current and the vigor that the current staff has for recruiting.
Yeah.
And we'll go out there and do the job at a high level, because not only it's his job, but he wants to and has a passion for it. Right. So now, I don't mean this is the second time I want to bag on the last staff in this segment, but relatability to players was a thing.
Right.
Right. Being able to meet kids where they're at, understand, who they are, where they come from, and understand what's important to them was something that was lacking from the last staff, reportedly. Now, I wasn't part of any of those conversations, so obviously that's secondhand information. But it was out there that hey man, I'm from the South, he's from the North. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't know what I'm about, and I'm out, and I'm thinking, the first time I heard it, Zach, oh, yeah, okay, maybe this is just one kid. But then the story started to persist. And I think that Marcus Davis is the type of guy that will come in and, again, bridge that gap, in the mode of somebody I think about T. Will, and how he's a player's coach, and, players are drawn to him and they play for him. That's what Marcus Davis potentially brings to the table for Auburn in 2023.
Yeah, I love the upside. And I love what he can bring from a recruiting front. And I don't know his X's and O's stuff, but I do know receivers got better when he was able to coach them. And to me, that's good enough. That's good enough for me. We'll see if he can do it at the SEC level. And I think learning from an offensive guy like Hugh Freeze will help his career. Mike G, I want to get your thoughts on where this Auburn roster is currently and what you want to see added to it over the next few weeks while the portal is open. That's coming up next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall, with two outstanding locations in the Auburn and Opelika areas. Also, if you're an out-of-towner tuning in, alumnihall.com is the best place to get all of your Auburn swag, your Auburn merch, and even Auburn memorabilia. As you get ready for the thick of the basketball season, make sure you are swagged out with as much Auburn gear as you possibly can and get it at Alumni Hall. And hey, baseball will be here before you know it as well. Be sure to check out, once again, alumnihall.com, or check out their stores. The one in Auburn's on College Street, and the one in Opelika is in Tiger Town. Thank you so much to Alumni Hall for partnering with Locked On Auburn. Mike G of the War Rapport, our guest on this War Rapport Wednesday. My biggest concern about this roster is, and will continue to be until it's addressed, is the front seven as a whole, but specifically, Mike G, the linebacker position. And in this Ron Roberts defense, that includes what we know is the edge, that outside linebacker that they will blitz a ton. They've addressed that a little bit, and I think Keldrick Falk is going to be huge in that front. But McAllister, the transfer from Vanderbilt, I think that's helpful. Elijah McAllister. But with the departure of Owen Papo, like, there's not a clear guy in the middle of the field to me. I don't know if Cam Riley's really shown that he's able to do that on a consistent basis. But to me, linebacker is the biggest hole in this roster right now.
Yeah. You and I had an off-camera conversation about Christian Robinson and his non-retention. Linebacker left something to be desired last year. And, that's not again, the crap on that group. But there were a lot of guys just out of position, taking the wrong gaps. They were not a strength. I felt like they were more of a liability last year than anything. And it stressed the defense quite a bit. Now, we played a little better on the back end in that defensive backfield. We were able to get pressure off the edge at times. But, having your linebackers protect that second level is so important. And having guys in position is important. And Auburn needs to improve there just flat out, right? It's going to be a long season defensively if they can't improve at linebacker.
Right.
I'll be looking to see now, Owen Papo, I don't know that he leaves. He was an uber talented guy, but I don't know that he leaves big shoes to fill in terms of like stats.
It's just I'm fine with Cam Riley being the second best backer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he needs to be the best backer on an SEC defense.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the thing I said about like the wide receiving core for the longest time. It's like, all right, there's a bunch of number twos and number threes. Who's that number one that kind of makes everybody slide into place? And, they never really got it. I think Cam Brown could be that guy now. But for linebacker, it's like, okay, I'm much more all right with Owen Papo. And I think Owen, for the most part, underachieved while he was at Auburn. I think an injury had a big part to do with that. I'm sure he's not super thrilled about being injured as much as he was. But Cam Riley physically is everything you want. He just seemed to step slow at times. Hey, and maybe Coach Roberts can come in here and fix that, because physically he's great, right? Physically, there is nothing about Cam Riley where you can look at it and be like, I don't know. I mean, that guy is like, the guy is a grown man, right?
Right.
And so maybe Roberts' defense can help Cam Riley take that next step, maybe slow things down a bit for him, make him process information quicker and react quicker. And if he can do that, I think he could be an all-SEC linebacker. I really do.
Yeah. I have my eyes on Wesley Steiner. He's a really good kid, just a great kid. He's a smart kid too. Now, I think he can be a hard hitter. He found himself out of position again. He was plagued by that, taking bad angles to the football and, just, not being where he's supposed to be at times. But, under a new coaching staff, I think a guy like Steiner could really come into his own next year and be a name that nobody was really talking about that makes a splash, on that defense next year. And they've got some work to do. So we talked about the portal earlier in this segment.
Yeah.
I'm going to be interested to see, is this one of those positions where Auburn goes out and targets some guys in the portal to come in and, be instant impact players on defense?
Yeah. And I think, I think there's room for that outside of the defensive backfield. Because I think your defensive front, like, your Jason Jones, Zykevious Walker, how big of a role does he have?
Mm-hmm.
But like, those are really good players, but they're not like the flashy players, right? They're not the players that kind of make the difference. I think those are the players that raise your floor of your defense, not necessarily raise your ceiling. And I think they need some guys that could possibly raise the ceiling. I think that's what it comes down to.
Well,
and I don't know where those guys are yet.
Well,
if I'm being honest with you.
Raising your floor is still really important. Like when it gets bad, how bad can it get? It's still a really important facet of playing, defense in the SEC or college football in general. So, if Auburn can raise the floor on defense, certainly, and get more even performances from that group, obviously it helps them. In a perfect world, you raise both, right? You raise both your floor and your ceiling. But they've got work to do on both ends, Zach. I mean, I'm not down. I'm not down on this group, but I definitely want to acknowledge that they had some struggles last year, and they're going to need to take a few steps forward this year if they want to be seen as an effective unit.
Yeah, I'm there with you, man. I'm there with you. Mike G, thank you so much for your time. As always, buddy, glad that you are feeling much better and we can get back to doing this on a weekly basis, my friend.
Good to be here, Zach. Go check us out at the War Rapport again. We got a lot of great stuff coming this season.
All right, that does it for this War Rapport Wednesday. Be sure to stop by our live show tonight after the Auburn basketball game, and Dale Dapprich will join me on the show tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.